Right now, along Iran's western mountains, a war is being fought that almost nobody outside the region is watching, and Tehran would very much like to keep it that way. A two-week escalation across Iranian Kurdistan has now killed at least 21 people, the deadliest confrontation between Tehran and Kurdish armed parties in over a decade. The question this raises is whether Iran is now facing a second front that won't go away, even as the regime fights to hold itself together from the inside. The 2025 to 2026 Iranian protests were a series of nationwide demonstrations against the government that began on December 28, 2025, the largest uprising in Iran since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, spreading to more than 200 cities across the country. That wave of unrest was triggered by collapsing living standards and a currency in freefall. The main reason the protests ignited when they did was a severe economic crisis. In late December 2025, the Iranian rial fell to its lowest historical level against the United States dollar, roughly 1.5 million rials per dollar, placing immense pressure on the public and on merchants struggling to price their goods. The nationwide protests started in late December at Tehran's Grand Bazaar in response to worsening economic conditions, before spreading to universities and other cities, with the slogans evolving from economic grievances to political and anti-government demands. That drift from bread-and-butter anger to direct calls for regime change was not gradual. It was fast. The ensuing crackdown, reportedly carried out under orders by Ali Khamenei and senior officials to use live fire on protesters, resulted in massacres that left thousands of protesters dead. By late January, Time, The Guardian, and Iran International, citing local health officials, reported that between 30,000 and 36,500 protesters were killed during January 8th and 9th alone. The scale of that violence shocked the world, but it didn't stop the resistance. The Iranian public does not believe the regime's claim to have won its 12-day war with Israel in 2025. Many Iranians viewed that conflict as a humiliating defeat for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. For the first time, the Guard Corps was roundly defeated in a real fight against a peer adversary. It has become clear to millions inside Iran that this force is now mostly effective only against unarmed citizens at home. Hudson Institute analyst Michael Duran argued that no matter what happens next, there is no scenario in which the Islamic Republic survives 2026 with its power intact. Too many uncontrollable intersecting factors are conspiring to erode the regime's authority. That erosion is precisely what the Kurdish opposition has been watching and calculating. The 2022 Woman Life Freedom movement, sparked by the death in custody of Mahsa Amini, a young Kurdish woman from Saqqez, renewed global attention on the plight of Iran's Kurds. The 2025 to 2026 nationwide Iranian protests, which included major Kurdish participation in general strikes, set the stage for the unified political front that crystallized in February 2026. On February 22, 2026, 5 major Kurdish opposition groups in Iran declared the formation of a unified alliance, the Coalition of Political Forces of Iranian Kurdistan. Included in the coalition are the Kurdistan Freedom Party, the Free Life Party of Kurdistan, the Democratic Party of Iranian Kurdistan, the Organization of Iranian Kurdistan Struggle known as Kabat, and the Kamala Party. This is the part Tehran has always feared most. Not one Kurdish faction, but all of them, coordinated, operating from a single platform for the first time. On March 2, 2026, the newly formed coalition released its first official statement, warning that Iran is entering a decisive phase and describing an accelerating collapse of the ruling system that could trigger a domino effect. The coalition issued a formal directive to security personnel in Iranian Kurdistan, urging immediate defection, framing the choice as joining the side of the nation, seeking to dismantle the regime's local enforcement capacity from within. The coalition's stated objectives include toppling the Islamic Republic, achieving Kurdish self-determination, and establishing a democratic administrative system in what Kurds call Eastern Kurdistan, their term for Iranian Kurdistan. Among the factions, the Kurdistan Freedom Party, known as PJAK and led by Hussein Yazdanpana, is widely regarded as the most militarily active formation at present. The Free Life Party of Kurdistan, known as PJAK, carries the most complicated regional baggage. Originally an offshoot of the Kurdistan Workers' Party focused on Iranian Kurdistan, its armed wing, the Eastern Kurdistan Units, or YRK, is assessed to be fielding the most capable fighters, many of them women, operating out of the Kandil Mountains near the Iran-Iraq border. Then came the moment that electrified the region and terrified Tehran. On February 28, 2026, the United States followed through on its threats and carried out major strikes in Iran alongside Israel, its biggest military buildup in the region since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Approximately 1/5 of all United States and Israeli airstrikes targeted Iranian Kurdistan, striking Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps barracks, besiege facilities, border guard commands, police stations, and intelligence headquarters across Sanandaj, Kermanshah, Mahabad, Ilam, and surrounding cities. By March 7th, over 40 security installations had been destroyed in Sanandaj alone, and the Kurdish city of Kermanshah received the second highest number of airstrikes of any Iranian city, surpassed only by Tehran. That's not a coincidence, that's a strategy. The airstrikes were carving out space for a potential Kurdish ground push, and Kurdish commanders were watching. According to Kurdish sources, these forces had been preparing to participate in ground operations in western Iran, with the aim of pressuring Iranian security forces and dispersing them across multiple arenas. The strategic concept behind the activity was that fighting along the border areas would force the Iranian regime to divert military and security resources there, potentially easing pressure on protesters and opposition elements in major cities. According to reporting by The Washington Post, Trump offered extensive United States air cover and other backing to anti-regime Iranian Kurdish groups to help them seize portions of western Iran, and in conversations with Kurdish leaders, told them that the Kurds must choose a side, either with America and Israel or with Iran. Members of Kurdish opposition groups affirmed the plans, with one stating they couldn't move if the air above them wasn't cleared, calling for a no-fly zone similar to the Iraqi no-fly zones that helped Kurds in Iraq establish autonomy after 1991. The ambition was enormous. The window looked real. So what happened? And if you want to understand why the Second Front is still burning today, despite ceasefires, despite diplomacy, despite Washington pulling back, subscribe now, because what the Kurdish fighters are doing on the ground right now changes everything about where this conflict is heading. After days of reports suggesting the United States and Israel were considering some form of Kurdish role against Iran, Trump abruptly distanced himself from the idea. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One on March 8th, he said he did not want Kurdish fighters entering Iran, describing the conflict as complicated enough as it is, and warning that he did not want Kurds hurt or killed. The reversal reflected mounting regional resistance to the idea, especially from Turkey, which viewed any empowerment of Kurdish militant factions near its borders as a direct security threat. Reuters reported that Kurdish commanders were frustrated by a lack of clear United States or Israeli strategy, and that Iran's threats helped keep Kurdish forces from launching a full incursion. The expectation among some of the factions involved was that they would enter Kurdish towns in western Iran as United States and Israeli jets suppressed Iranian security forces, and that their advance would trigger a broader popular uprising in the country. None of it happened. Within a week of the war's start, Trump canceled the plan, and the Kurdish front never materialized in the way anyone had envisioned. But here's the thing Tehran cannot afford to ignore. The Kurds didn't disband. They didn't stand down. They kept fighting on their own terms. Despite the implementation of the 2026 Iran war ceasefire, Iranian Kurdish opposition groups in the Kurdistan region of Iraq continued to come under Iranian missile and drone attacks. Since the war began in late February, there have been more than 810 attacks on the Kurdistan region by Iran and Iranian proxies in Iraq. Iran was bombing its own opposition relentlessly, even after the guns on the main front had fallen quiet. During the war itself, Iran and allied forces launched hundreds of missiles and drones against the Kurdistan region, nearly half of them targeting Iranian Kurdish parties or fighters. The strikes continued after the April ceasefire. On April 17th, drone and missile attacks on the Jaznikhan camp and a party site in Sidkan killed 2 female Democratic Party of Iranian Kurdistan Peshmerga and the 17-year-old son of another member. And a further drone struck the Zayway Spi camp near Koya, one day before the June 17th Memorandum of Understanding was signed. Iran was making its message plain. It would not tolerate Kurdish armed groups surviving this conflict intact. The Kurds received that message clearly and responded in kind. 9 armed incidents have been documented inside Iran between May 29th and July 1st, 2026, 7 of them producing confirmed deaths. The fighting spans 3 Iranian provinces, West Azerbaijan, Kurdistan, and Kermanshah, with related drone attacks extending into Erbil Governorate in Iraq's Kurdistan region. The bloodiest phase came in the final week of June. On June 26th, fighters of the YRK, the armed wing associated with PJAK, attacked a checkpoint on the Bane Sakez road, killing 3 government personnel. The Norway-based Henga Organization for Human Rights reported that a separate attack in the same period was claimed by a newly formed Kurdish group calling itself Zori Hiwa, meaning Son of Hope. That same day, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a statement announcing a counter-terrorism operation in which it claimed a 6-member team was completely destroyed after infiltrating West Azerbaijan province. The escalation peaked on the night of July 1st. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps ambushed one confirmed Democratic Party of Iranian Kurdistan unit at Kezkapan, roughly 3 kilometers from Paranshar, killing 6 Peshmerga, according to the party's statement. The party described the unit as being on a political and organizational mission. A second Kurdish unit was intercepted the same night near Musalan in the Sardasht area, in a clash that later reports identified as also involving the Democratic Party of Iranian Kurdistan. At least 4 members were killed, with later reports giving 5. Majid Glai, president of the American Kurdish Committee, offered the sharpest verdict on what this fighting actually represents. He told Fox News Digital that the latest clashes should not be read as a full-scale uprising, but should also not be dismissed as routine border violence. The operations, he said, are not like periodic clashes on the border. They seem to be deep inside Iranian territory. Kurdish frustration has grown sharply after months of Iranian attacks on Kurdish areas and opposition-linked sites, including in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. Now consider the counter case. Iran still holds real advantages here, and it would be a mistake to dismiss them. Kurdish factions are traditionally seen as the most organized of the various insurgent forces operating on Iranian soil, including Arab, Azeri, and Baluch movements. Yet their capabilities pale in comparison to the Islamic Republic's deeply entrenched security apparatus. One analyst estimated that the strength of groups based across the border in Iraq may number no more than around 1,000 lightly armed fighters, who lack meaningful support among Iran's broader Kurdish population. Reza Kabi, a senior figure in the Komala Workers' Party, argued during the conflict that Kurdish factions could not enter the war unless they were convinced that a nationwide uprising against the Iranian government was already underway. That threshold was never met, at least not in the way the factions had imagined. The resilience of the Islamic Republic lies not in the absence of dissent, but in its capacity to manage it. Unless future mobilizations coincide with sustained elite fragmentation or profound economic collapse, the political system is likely to endure, adapting once again to a familiar challenge. These are real constraints, but the single truth that doesn't change is this: Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is facing a new round of violence in the country's Kurdish-majority West, raising questions about whether a long-simmering insurgency is entering a more active phase. The flare-up matters beyond Iran's borderlands, because Kurdish opposition groups were recently viewed as a potential pressure point. And now, some Kurdish voices fear they could be left exposed as Washington and Tehran return to fragile diplomacy. At the same time, one Kurdish official noted that the Iranian Kurdish movement has been galvanized by a surge of youthful recruitment, with party bases and camps now full of the younger generation of Kurds from Iranian Kurdistan who still believe in the struggle. The violence comes as Iran is moving forward with a memorandum of understanding with Washington that has drawn criticism from Iranian opposition circles. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian confirmed that the supreme leader had approved the agreement after receiving assurances that Iran's rights would be protected, according to Iran Wire. Kurdish parties are deeply skeptical of any negotiated arrangement with Iran, arguing that many Kurds believe such a deal would only strengthen the regime and leave the Kurdish question off the table entirely. That skepticism is driving fighters into the mountains of West Azerbaijan and Kermanshah, regardless of what Washington decides. The Second Front wasn't launched by a Trump phone call. It grew from decades of grievance, sharpened by a year of bombs, massacres, and broken promises. The Islamic Republic may kill protesters and try to outlast the demonstrations, but the regime can no longer restore its authority. It enters 2026 weaker than at any time since its founding, and if it manages to last out the year, it will be even weaker still. The Kurdish Front is the proof. The regime that once dictated terms to its borderlands is now fighting skirmishes on multiple axes simultaneously, while its currency collapses, its people protest from rooftops, and its supreme leader's legitimacy rests on a foundation that cracks a little more with every passing week. Two questions this video deliberately does not answer. Is the Kurdish insurgency now genuinely self-sustaining, or does it collapse the moment Washington and Tehran finalize a comprehensive deal that leaves the Kurds out? And if the Islamic Republic does fracture, does a Kurdish-administered Western Iran stabilize the region, or open an entirely new conflict with Turkey that nobody is ready for? What do you think? Tell me in the comments. And if you want to keep following this story as it develops, subscribing means you won't miss what comes next.